Okay, first of all, album of the year. Okay, album of the year. Even if it doesn't win, it's my album of the year so far. So, okay, now with that out of the way, I want to talk about what makes Pharrell's production on this album so addicting and hard hitting. What makes it so nasty and interesting that it gets reactions like this?
This is culturally inappropriate.
The beat.
The beat is insane. It is insane.
Where are they making these beats? Where are they getting these beats from? Pharrell? This is Pharrell?
Well, let's talk about it. My first lesson is to experiment with percussion to stand out. Pharrell experiments widely with different percussion techniques and styles across the entire album. When it comes to exploration, I think it's much easier nowadays for producers to experiment when it comes to melodies and weird synth sounds and presets and sample packs and whatnot. But it's a bit harder to keep things fresh and unique over time with your percussion. Especially if you have go-to templates with your favorite drum samples loaded up and basic patterns ready to go, it's really easy for a lot of your drums to just sound the same. Now, don't get me wrong, I love templates. They speed up my workflow tremendously, and they make it really easy to just ideate quickly and get what I'm hearing in my ear pattern-wise out into the DAW quickly, which is great, and I recommend it. But after you get the whole skeleton of your beat fleshed out and you have the melodies and you have all the sounds and layers that you want, it can be helpful to revisit those original drum samples and patterns and see if you can switch things up, or if what your template helped you produce is really what's right for the track. Otherwise, it can be really easy to just get stuck in a rut sonically. I mean, look at Jackboys 2, which released the same weekend as Let God Sort 'Em Out. So many of the drum patterns and sounds that they use on that album are just so similar. It just sounds on average like really predictable run-of-the-mill trap, with hi-hat rolls or basic hi-hat patterns and really predictable snare placement and just the classic trap drum samples. It just gets a little boring after a while. I don't mean to shade on the project. I mean, I guess I kind of am. I am kind of shading on it. I thought it was kind of boring. But honestly, the percussion is just not nearly as interesting as this album. Let God Sort 'Em Out, on the other hand, is able to stay interesting all the way throughout, in large part thanks to its varied production styles and feels. I mean, just look at Chains and Whips, for example. Think about what the percussion is on that song. It's literally just a kick. That's it. I'm actually going to get back to that later. But another example would be POV, another fan favorite, really hard-hitting beat. And you'll notice that a lot of the drum sounds are, firstly, they're acoustic, or they sound more like live drum sounds. But secondly, on top of that, they're really pitched down. And you can especially hear this in the snare and the open hat.
Whole lot of browsing ads, my reinvention. I know you thinking how's it?
Like, no live open hat actually sounds like that. It's clearly pitched down. Or as another example, look at Inglourious Bastards.
Catch me in the kitchen where the dope is, with an apron it's whiter than the post is.
Inappropriate.
Completely different style of percussion, right? There's a lot of shakers and these clickety, clackety sounds. I don't even know what instrument that is. More to my point, it's so different. It's not traditional trap drums. But honestly, I think So Be It might be the best standout example on this album. Because if you listen closely, you'll notice that the hi-hats and the clap samples are reversed, which leads to this really wonky and disorienting feel that complements the eerie Arabic sample perfectly.
When I was born, grandmama could see it. I be Bentley driven and very strategic.
By the way, I explored those techniques and tried to make a similar sounding beat with a different Arabic sample in my previous video, which you should check out if you haven't. All right, so what are some concrete tips for experimenting with your percussion in your own beats? Well, you can take a page out of Pharrell's book and mess around with pitching, stretching, or even reversing the drum samples that you would otherwise just use as is. But it doesn't have to stop there. You can try all sorts of wonky or out-of-the-box effects on your drums to make them sound different and stand out, just to see what it'll sound like. Just a couple examples that I've had a lot of fun messing around with in the past are distortion, phasers and flangers, or even high-speed delays. The point is to get creative with it. If you think trying some effect or technique on your percussion feels wrong or forbidden, that might actually be a really good sign that it's unique and you're onto something that could potentially lead to a really cool new sound for you. So don't shut down your crazy ideas. Follow your curiosity, your instinct, and your ear. And always remember the golden rule of making music. If it sounds good, then it's good. My second takeaway from this album is to keep it simple and spacious, to leave room for the artist. This project is a pure hip-hop album. The spotlight is on Pusha T and Malice and their veteran ability to write and deliver dense, technical, and nasty bars, all while sharing their very personal story. The spotlight is not on Pharrell and his ability to make insanely busy or harmonically complex beats. And Pharrell understood this perfectly. Look at Chains and Whips. The main melody is just an E-flat harmonic minor scale. That's it. It literally just goes up the scale with one brief turnaround. And I mentioned this briefly in the last point, but look at how minimal the drums are. It's just a kick. There's no snare or layered claps. There's no hi-hats, no perks, just a kick. That's it. Even the bass line is just 3 notes, also from the E-flat harmonic minor scale. So we have a guitar just playing a scale, 3 notes on the bass, and a kick. And that's like 80% of the beat. And yet people are going crazy over this beat.
The beat is insane. It is insane.
So how is it able to evoke such a reaction with such simple elements? I'd argue that the entire backbone from this beat comes from the bass line and how the kick and the bass line sit with each other in the mix and create a groove. In fact, that guitar line I mentioned isn't even present during the verses. It's just one note, that top note of the scale, to leave more room for the bars. Now, of course, there's more to that beat. There's that like high-pitched, squeaky door sounding sample and like the occasional spooky horns. But honestly, that's really it. I think really the core identity of this song is behind the bass line and the kick. There are plenty of other examples of simplicity and spaciousness on this album. Another great one is Mike Tyson Blow to the Face, or MTBTTF, or MTBTF, whatever you want to call it. The melody of this beat is just a D minor triad in first inversion strummed on the guitar.
Unless you joystick and dress him, my presence, your pleasure, peasants, he's pressure.
That's it. There's no progression. There's no actual melody line. It's just the chord being strummed. But it has this really cool syncopated rhythm which weaves in and out of the beat and creates this irresistible groove. Even Birds Don't Sing, which is arguably the most maximalist of productions on this album, is entirely built around one simple piano melody.
Lost in emotion, mama's youngest. Trying to navigate life without my compass. Some experience death and feel numbness. But not me, I felt it all and couldn't function. Seeing you.
Every other element builds off that one melody line. The synth brass line, the strings, the choir, and even the chords. Now, sure, there's more harmony and chords that build up as the song progresses, but it's all based off of simple diatonic parallel motion. Basically, all the harmonies move exactly with the melody, but just shifted along different notes in the same scale. Now, I'll admit that that's a bit of an oversimplification. Like, there are some ornamentations and flourishes around that melody in some of the layers, but the main point is that all of the layers are built off that one piano line. You can just hear it. You can feel it. Now, don't be mistaken. Making your beats simple and good is very hard. Simple does not mean easy. In this Complex interview, Pharrell himself expresses just how much hard and meticulous work it took to chisel out every moment on the album.
Yeah.
Right.
But to your point though, like you're right, we did sand down. We sanded down every fucking crevice on it. We polished this shit.
Yeah.
You have no idea the way we polished this shit.
Yeah.
You can eat off these songs.
So what are some practical tips to help you make your beats simpler and more spacious while still keeping them hard-hitting and memorable? Firstly, you can try focusing on just one strong melodic idea and letting that guide you through the rest of your production. I think one of the best ways to come up with really natural and catchy melodic lines is just freestyle singing or scatting. And it can help to put down like a basic drum beat or pattern and maybe a chord progression just to give you a sense of tempo and key center. And then just try singing along to it. And then once you get something you like, don't be afraid to just scrap that placeholder beat or those chords and try something else entirely. Secondly, focus on groove. Unless you're making ambient music, chances are you're going to have some sort of rhythm or percussion on your track. The groove of that percussion, like the pocket that it carves out for the vocals, is a central aspect to your song's DNA. I think a very easy trap to fall into when you're starting with a really basic beat is to feel like, okay, this is like really boring, it's not making me nod my head, so let me add a bunch of hi-hat rolls or perks everywhere and try to fill out the sound to try to make it more interesting. But a lot of the times that just makes it unnecessarily busy. So next time that happens to you, instead of just falling back on adding more, try messing with swing, syncopation, and silence. Swing, really quickly for those who don't know, is when you just move every other note in some percussive element off grid a little bit or off the perfect midpoint, just to add, like the name suggests, a sense of swing. Syncopation is when you play with adding notes on upbeats rather than downbeats, and that also can contribute to the groove. And silence, well, I've said this before, silence is your best friend as a producer. Like, it can make louder parts and impacts that much more impactful. A third tip I have, which sounds a little counterintuitive, is to go crazy in the experimentation stage. Add layers, counter melodies, crazy chords and pads, whatever your heart desires or whatever you hear in your ears. And then once you feel like you have enough to make a full track out of, start ruthlessly taking out elements and carving away at it. Ask yourself, if I remove this one element or pattern from the beat, will it completely change the feel of the track for the worse? If the answer is no, delete it. And if you don't want to delete it, you're still in love with it, you really think that it fits in the track, then maybe you can mess around with taking it in and out of the arrangement to keep things fresh. And a final tip is, once you have the core of your track complete, just try like gibberish rapping or singing over it, just to see if it feels like it's affording enough space for a lead vocalist. This might be the most important point. Nobody wants to rap or sing on a beat that just completely drowns them out or competes them out of the mix. So to recap, experiment all you want, but once you're done experimenting, stop thinking in the mindset of like throwing paint on a canvas and trying to make something cool, and try to shift your mindset to more of carving a sculpture out of stone. My third and final tip is to be unpredictable, to keep the listener interested. Every beat on this album has a completely unique core sound, and even within a single track, the feeling and the arrangement is almost never static. It's dynamic and always keeping you interested.
All the beats, they're all like completely different.
Completely different.
Every song on here stands on its own, man.
Now, the obvious point or example here is beat switches. POV has a beat switch for Malice's verse, but one thing to note that I really like about it is that it switches for his verse, but then returns back to the main beat for the final chorus, which I think really ties the song together and just brings it back full circle. The title track also has a beat switch for Nas's verse, but another more interesting example I would say is So Far Ahead, which I wouldn't even call a beat switch as much as it is like an entire genre switch, right? Like, it starts with Pharrell's falsetto with these gospel vocals and chords, and it just sounds like a straight up gospel song, which is hilarious, by the way, because he's just completely flexing wealth in the chorus. But then when it comes time for Push's verse, it just switches to this synth trap beat that is, again, hard hitting and completely different than the sound of the chorus. Also, this track is in 6/8, which I think further proves my point in terms of being unpredictable, because like 99% of the hip hop that you've listened to in your life, I'm willing to bet, is in 4/4 common time. Yet another example of unpredictability is, again, Mike Tyson Blow to the Face, which just starts with Pusha T spitting, no beat, just a cappella. And then in the middle of his verse, the beat just suddenly drops. And it doesn't even drop with the kick, it drops with the snare, and it just completely catches you off guard. And for a final example, which is a bit more subtle, but personally it's like one of my favorite sonic moments on the album, is the beat switch, or I should say the drum switch on FICO. Pusha T gets a full 16 bars into his verse with a simple but hard-hitting drum pattern, which is mostly acoustic. It sounds like a real live drum kit. And then almost exactly at the start of the next 16 bars, Pharrell completely swaps those drum samples out with a traditional trap sound.
Balance on tight ropes. They know they not much for the blood. Have my man shoot your block. I'ma send his ass far as the flight go. Ain't worried.
Like a really punchy trap signature snare and hi-hats and a different kick, and it just comes in so hard. Like, it makes you want to lean in and listen more closely to like what's going on. Like, why does this suddenly feel more energetic? He does the same thing with Malice's verse, and it's so good. It's so satisfying to listen to. Like, it makes me excited every time it comes on. So in terms of practical tips of how you can do this in your own beats, I know I kind of laid out some pretty concrete steps, like just through exploring those examples, but to kind of bring it all together, I like to think of it almost like a pyramid, where at the bottom of the pyramid, you have less drastic changes to the sound, and then at the top, you have more drastic changes. So at the very bottom, you have like 101 arrangement, right? Dropping elements in and out. That keeps things unpredictable, keeps it moving, keeps you interested. And then a level above that would be like drum switches, right? The beat stays the same, but you're just switching out the samples. Or you could do the same thing with, it applies to melodic elements as well. You could just switch out a synth for another preset or another sound. And then a step above that would be switch out the beat entirely. And this is like really popular in hip hop right now. It has been for like a decade now, probably. Not new at all, but like if you want to keep it unpredictable, it is a pretty surefire way to do that, because like nobody's going to see a beat switch coming. That's like kind of the whole point. And remember, if you want to be a little bit different, see if you can tie it back to the original beat like Pharrell does on POV. Like, I think that's just a perfect execution of a beat switch. And then finally at the very top is a complete genre switch, just vibe, genre, everything swapped out. Now, switching elements or parts of the arrangement out isn't the only thing you can do. There are also all sorts of other techniques, like adding ear candy or singular little sonic moments in a beat that can also make it stand out. But I'm not going to get too much into that in this video. But yeah, those are my 3 main takeaways from this album as a producer. All right, outro time. This album hasn't even been out for a full week. Well, it's Friday. It's been out for exactly 1 week at the time of this recording. And I've probably played it like 15 times minimum by now. I'm obsessed. I love it so much. And I still find something new to appreciate about it every listen. My favorite tracks right now have to be So Be It, which I've just been obsessed with since it dropped as a single. And then all the acronym tracks, like FICO, EBITDA, Mike Tyson Blow to the Face, like they're all so banging and so listenable. It's re-listenable. It's great. But yeah, let me know what your favorite tracks are in the comments below. I would love to hear. Anyways, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and hopefully you learned something new and you're excited to try something next time you make a beat. And if you want more like this, then subscribe and comment down below. Let me know what I should do next.